Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm tackling the brand new Trench Crsuade Combat Biologist, and I'm keeping it grimdark and efficient, using speed paints for the base tones, and then a quick and easy rusted armour effect, and then a touch of grime to push that dirty Trench Crusade look. Then a simple recipe for a convincing looking liquid vial using a combination of glazing combined with fluorescent paints, and everything's covered in today's tutorial, so let's get into it. And as always, the first part of the process is to apply the base coat, and I opted for a zenithal highlight as I'm going to be utilising some contrast paints. So that just involves priming the entire model in black, and then coming in from above and at 45 degrees with some white primer. And that just gives a nice and quick base for all of the contrast paints. And I'm firstly going to be using a combination of some Vallejo Express Lancer Grey and Hospitalier Black to paint in the rubber parts of the hazmat suit. And I'm going to be mixing these in, 3 parts of the Lancer Grey to 1 part of the black. And this little bit of black should just help to darken up the colour slightly and give it a more grimdark look. And I'm then just going to apply this mixture to all of the rubber parts of the hazmat suit. Then I went in with some Vallejo Express Greasy Black, which is another great colour from the Express range. And I'm just going to use this to break up the Lancer Grey a little bit and use it to paint in the trousers and the boots. And I'm also going to use this to paint in all of the tubing on the back and on the mask as well. Next up, I'm going to be using some Vallejo Express Iceberg Grey, and I'm going to use this to paint in all of the armour panels. And this is quite a thin contrast paint, so I'm going to apply this to all of the armour panels, and then allow it to fully dry, and then come back in and apply a second coat. And this will help to build up the intensity of the bluish colour. And for the other smaller trim parts on the model, I use some Vallejo Express Willow Bark to paint in the staff of the weapon. And then some Vallejo Express Battle Dress Brown to paint in all of the leather pouches and straps. I also at the same time painted in the visor just using some black paint before beginning the highlight process. which was going to involve airbrushing 3 of the colours from the Army Painter Blacks and Greys triad. And I'm going to be using a low PSI with the airbrush, around 15 to 20. And starting with the darkest colour, which is the deep grey, just applying this to the visor very carefully, trying not to get any overspray onto any other parts, and trying to focus the spray towards the upper and centre parts, making sure I leave plenty of the black down towards the bottom of the visor. And then it's just a case of going in with the next 2 colours, making sure I'm even lighter on the trigger and focusing even higher up the visor with these sprays. And then finishing off with the lightest colour, which is the ash grey, which is just going to be a very quick spot highlight on the very top centre. And this should give a super smooth transition from the black all the way up to the light grey. Next up, I'm going to be working on the liquid vial, and to do that I'm going to start off with some Army Painter Burnt Turf from the Ochre's triad, and I'm going to be thinning this 50-50 with some water, and when applying it I'm going to start my brush stroke from around 50% up the vial, bringing the brush stroke down towards the bottom. And this way it should be depositing the majority of the paint towards the bottom section, which should build up a nice transition from the black. But as the paint has been thinned down, this is going to take several coats. I think in total it took around 3 or 4 coats for me, but you just want to build it up until you get a really nice opaque ochre towards the bottom part of the vial. And as I said, it's going to take 3 or 4 coats, but with a bit of patience you will build up a nice ochre colour. And I'm then going to take the next darker colour in the ochre triad, and again I'm going to thin this down 50-50 with some water, and I'm just going to apply this over the top transition between the lighter ochre and the black, again using downward strokes, starting near the black area and finishing the stroke towards the top part of the lighter ochre, and this should just help to smooth out that transition between the black and the lighter ochre. And then to further smooth out the transition, I go in with a little bit of Army Painter Dark Tone, which is a black acrylic wash similar to Nuln Oil, and I'm just going to glaze this down from the black area across the transition line with the ochre, and then I'm going to clean off the wash from my brush and feather out the wash, pushing it towards the bottom of the vial, and that way I'm going to avoid getting any nasty coffee staining from the wash. And as a final touch up for the transition, I'm going to go back in with the diluted darker ochre colour, and with a very small amount on the tip of my brush, just go over the transition one final time which should help to touch up any inconsistencies with the wash. I'm then going to paint in the liquid surface line with the ochre colour. Either one would do here. And if I'm being honest, I was aiming to create a straight line for the liquid level. However, the area was a little bit restricted from other parts of the model, and my line was wonky as all hell. But actually it turned out quite well, as it looked like the liquid was slightly moving in the vial itself. And for once, my mess up turned out to be a positive. So my advice for this part is to be bad at drawing freehand, and you should be good. And when drawing this line, you do want to make sure that you are drawing it slightly above the transition line and into the black area of the vial. I'm then going to go in with some Army Painter Night Sky, which is a desaturated blue, and just paint this onto 90% of the black area on the upper part of the vial, which should help to give it more of a glassy look rather than just leaving it in the black primer. I'm then going to switch to some Army Painter Brain Matter Beige, which is a off-white colour, but you can use any white or off-white colour of your choosing. And I'm going to be using this to create some areas in the liquid where I want it to be extra glowy and fluorescent, which is going to be towards the bottom of the vial. So again, I'm going to thin this down 50-50 with some water and just glaze this downwards towards the bottom section, and just building it up over a couple of layers. This time it doesn't need to be fully opaque, it just needs to brighten up the area slightly. I'm also going to be applying this to the liquid line, not across the entire area, but more focused towards the centre of the line. And then use this to apply a few spots across the surface of the liquid, which should eventually look a bit like some air bubbles once we get onto the next step. And that next step is to apply some fluorescent paint, and I'm going to be using some Army Painter Lens Flare Glow, which is a yellow fluorescent colour, and I'm just going to be applying 2 layers of this to the entire liquid area. And now that the vial had been completed, I then went on to paint all the metallic trim, and I'm going to be using some Kaleido Zirconium Black. I purchased this some time ago and have been meaning to try it out for some time now. It's a really nice dark black metallic, perfect for painting in the grimdark style. And I'm going to use this to paint in all of the metallics, including the blade of the weapon and the metallic parts of the helmet as well. I'm then going to take some Army Painter Heavy Metal and use this to create some scratches and dents across all of the blue armour panels. And for the most part this is just edge highlighting all of the raised edges and the rivets as well, but I'll also throw in a few scratches and chips along the way as well. And I'm then going to switch to some Army Painter Dark Rust and pretty much do exactly the same thing with the rust and apply it over the metal edge highlighting and scratches, making sure I leave some of the metallic area still visible underneath the rust. And after applying the rust effect, I'll also go in with a slightly dampened brush and try and feather out some of the edges, and this blends the brownish orange colour into the blue armour and makes the rust look even more realistic. And the final part of the process was to go in and selectively apply some Villainy Inks Decrepit Filth, and I'm going to be applying this to areas like the bottom of the cape, the armour panels, and also any of the larger recesses across the model as well. And then I'm going to come in with a clean brush and just feather out all the edges into the surrounding area. And this will just help to dirty up the model slightly and add a little bit of extra grime here and there. And once that was dry, the model was now complete. And I'm pretty happy with the way the model turned out, especially the liquid vial. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube members, and I'll see you in the next one.